There we go. Hi everybody and welcome to Scott's Big Book Study, where we will study the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Today's date is Saturday, the 27th of July 2024. My name is Maria and I'm a recovered compulsive overeater from County Dublin in Ireland, and I'll be your host for today's study. Our co-hosts are Carol O and our Q&A is Sue L. If you have any questions during the meeting, please contact either myself or the co-host by private message in the chat function. The chat function will be disabled until 10 minutes before the Q&A, and then we'll turn the chat function back on again. Please note that Harlan will be recorded for the duration of the study today. However, the Q&A sessions which follows, that won't be recorded. We don't record that. So do feel free to ask Harlan a question if you have a question during that time. We ask that you please keep your microphone on mute during today's study, and also to turn off your video if you're exercising, eating, or if you need to step away from the screen for any reason, just disconnect your camera. During the meeting, we'll post the link to the 7th edition and also to the previous week's recording. So if you want to listen to any of the previous week's recording, we'll post the link for you during the meeting. So now we're going to go over to Scottsdale in Arizona to Harlan G. Good morning, Harlan. How are you?
Good morning, Maria. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I'm really, really grateful that you guys are here. I hope that we're going to say something today that'll help you, say something today that'll move your program forward a bit. At times, there are people who are doing things on screen that are rather distracting. So I will, if you would co-host me so I have the ability, shut down your cameras, because sometimes some of you are exercising, or you're doing something, or you're whatever, you're having these little conversations or something. So if you would co-host me, that would be, thank you very much. Okay. We have been in the chapter We Agnostics, and this is step number 2. We Agnostics concerns itself with step 2. And we're on page 54, Imagine Life Without Faith. We're going to start on page 54, Imagine Life Without Faith. And that is where we're going to start. And we'll see if we get the chapter finished today. We may finish this chapter, and then next week we will begin the 2 most misunderstood steps, 3 and 4. Chapter 5 are steps 3 and 4, which are the most misunderstood steps. The 2 most underutilized steps are 2 and 10, and the 2 most misunderstood are 3 and 4. They're so simple that in our zeal to overcomplicate things, we sort of miss the boat on a lot of that stuff. So that's where we get into trouble. We Agnostics. What is an agnostic? Ag means without, Gnostic means knowledge, without knowledge. Without knowledge of what? Of a complete understanding of God? Nobody has that. Theologians don't have that. Clergy people do not have that. Historians do not have that. I don't believe that it is possible for anybody to have a complete knowledge of God. I don't believe so. But what we are lacking knowledge of is the existence of a religious deity. And for some people, because of their inculcation as children, they do or don't believe in a religious deity. And so for some people, though, they are agnostic, means they are without knowledge as to whether or not there is indeed a religious deity up in the sky, or God knows where, in on some cloud or something, with a staff and stuff, so on and so forth, long white beard and so on. Well, that works for some people, and for some people, it just does not work. So it's just a matter of what works for you. Agnostic means without knowledge. For many of us, we have been suffering, pain of this disease. We have had people hurt us. We've had life hurt us. And who did we ultimately blame? We blamed God. And because we blamed God, we got this idea that if there was a God, he didn't believe much in me. He didn't let me win the lottery. He didn't get me a bunch of girlfriends. He didn't bring me a bunch of money. He didn't make me famous. He didn't make me whatever he didn't do for me. I have a long list, as we all do. But what I have is a life worth living today. What I have is a program that works. What I have is a fellowship that rallies around me when I need them. What I have are meetings. What I have is a big book. What I have an embarrassment of riches today. And an absolute embarrassment of riches today that gives me an overwhelming awe of the power of God. I have everything I could ever need and everything I could ever want right here in my life. Yes, I have hurts and old doubts and old things, and God knows what I have. Yes, I have that stuff. But the truth of the matter is, I'm alive and I have every reason to believe that life is going to continue to be good and get better, be good and get better. I have every reason to believe that. And so for me, I have no trouble believing in God. Now, when I say I have no trouble believing in God, for every person here, there is another image of what God is. So I believe in my God. You believe in your God. It doesn't matter what you believe in or what you don't believe in. The only thing that matters is that you are willing to believe, or that you believe that there is a power greater than yourself. We agnostics, notice he doesn't say those agnostics, to the agnostic. He doesn't say to, we agnostics, because we all have areas of our life where we are agnostic. What do I mean by that? Yes, I believe that God split the Red Sea, or I believe that God did the burning bush, or whatever that may be. Do I believe that God will handle my love life? Do I believe that God will handle my financial life? Do I believe that God will handle my health? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I'm going to die someday. That is as it should be. One day I will pass from the living unto the unliving. But what I've established is I'm going to live until I die, and I'm doing a good job of that with God's help. I have a life that today is worth living. And we agnostics, so I do have pockets of my life where I am agnostic. And I need to really look at some of that stuff and say, the less agnostic I am, the more I give to God, the better my life is going to be. I don't want you to think that when I say there are areas of my life where I am agnostic and that that's okay. It's not okay, because the more completely I am able to surrender my life and my will to God, that means all areas of my thinking and my actions, the more I am ready, willing, and able to do that, the better my life is going to be. The better my life is going to be. Just this week, I had a sciatica situation where my sciatic nerve acted up, which is extremely painful. My legs, my back, I couldn't function. I walk 3 miles a day, 6 days a week. Well, I haven't done that for a week because of this sciatic situation. I heard God very plainly say, go to the doctor. And going to the doctor is not the easiest thing in the world for me. I'm lazy, I'm stubborn, I'm obdurate. I don't always want to go to the doctor. I just want to sort of push through it. I went to the doctor put me on medications, turned me right around. I'm good. I'm walking, I'm driving, I can go to the store, I can do everything. And the medicine that the doctor gave me helped tremendously, tremendously. I'm so lucky that I listened to God. in my love life, in my financial life, whatever it is that God tells me to do. The one thing God tells me to do that I don't like to hear is work harder. And on my business, I have to work harder than I've worked. I'm 70 years old. I don't want to work at all. I want to be retired. But no such thing. I don't have the money to retire. I have to work. And I'm not working because I want to. I'm not working because I don't want to give it up. No, none of those things. I'm working really because I have to. But God keeps telling me you're going to have to work harder because otherwise you're going to be in trouble. And I don't want to hear that. But God is very gentle with me. And I hear him telling me all the time, work harder, Harlan, work harder. If you want to make more money, you're going to have to work. So agnostic means without knowledge. Agnostic means without knowledge. And so I have to remember that step 2 boils down to this. Do I believe, or am I willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself? And if I'm willing to believe, I don't have to believe, just be willing to believe, then I'm on my way. That is all that's required of me. I do not have to have this marvelous understanding of who God is and who God isn't. I don't have to know everything about God. I don't have to become a theologian. I don't have to become an Orthodox person. I don't have to become a person who is ultra religious. I don't have to be any of those things. All I have to believe or be willing to believe is that there is a power greater than myself. That's all that's required. And in this chapter, we see the thesis line of the big book on page 45. It simply says, the main object of this book is to help you find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. It doesn't say that the main object of this book is to help you get thin. The main object of this book is to help you get abstinent. The main object of this book is to help you get sober. The main object of this book is to help you recover. It doesn't say any of those things. The main object of this book is to help you find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. So in this quest of finding a power greater than myself, what I have to remember is it is very, very vital that I keep in mind that abstinence is not the most important thing in my life without exception. Abstinence does not treat this disease. Abstinence, being abstinent and losing weight does not treat this disease. If you want Anna 30 was doing a great deal of spree drinking. He stayed bone dry for 25 years. Out came his carpet slippers in a bottle, and he was dead within 4 years. I've lost weight on diets before. Didn't cure me. You've lost weight on diets before. Didn't cure you. You have successfully dieted before. Did it treat your disease? Absolutely not. The only thing that's going to treat this disease is a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. And that spiritual awakening as the result of the steps is what we're looking for here. So if the main object of this book is to help me find a power greater than myself, which will solve my problem, then it damn well better be the main object of my life. So we have to continually work at step 2. How do we do that? Very specifically by sponsoring other people. If you're not sponsoring, you're not going to recover. Now, if you're not at step 12 yet, obviously not. But once you get there, you need to start sponsoring, because this is how you perfect and enlarge your spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, is to sponsor. There are other forms of service. They are not equal to, they are not as effective as sponsoring. You have to give what you've been given. You have to give out what you've been given. Stop waiting to be the perfect sponsor. That doesn't exist. Stop being scared. If you're scared to sponsor, you better be more scared not to sponsor, because if you don't sponsor, you will not recover. I want to be very, very clear on that. You don't sponsor, you're working an 11-step program. And as far as I know, an 11-step program is not quite as effective as a 12-step program when it comes to combating addiction. I've never heard of somebody saying, I work an 11-step program, but yet that's what they're doing. Effectively, they're working an 11-step program rather than 12 because they're just not sponsoring. Let's go to page 54. Imagine life without faith. Were nothing left but pure reason, it wouldn't be life. Got to have a little laugh once in a while. Got to have a little fun. Got to have a little sentimentality once in a while. But we believed in life. Of course we did. We could not prove life in the sense that you can prove a straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points. Yet there it was. Could we still say the whole thing was nothing but a mass of electrons created out of nothing, meaning nothing, whirling onto a destiny of nothingness? Of course we couldn't. The electrons themselves seemed more intelligent than that, at least so the chemists said. Life is a wonderful, wonderful experience. Unfortunately, I've used up a lot of mine in the disease. I think I'm not alone there. I'm 70 years old. I missed out on a lot of life. I missed out on the passion of youth. I missed out on the romance of youth. I missed out on the sex and passion, and I missed out on the adventures of the relationships of youth. I will never be anybody's first love. I will never be anybody's summer romance. I will never be those things for anyone, and I will never have them for myself. I had a first love, obviously, but I never had, the passion of youth. I went on my first date with a girl. I was 35 years old. And that's all fact. But I don't have to miss out on the rest of it because I missed out on that. I can live my life to the fullest from this point on. And I don't know how to do that other than to hold God's hand and let him show me what it is he wants me to see. What is it that God wants me to see? Where is it that God wants me to go? Where is it that God wants me to live? What is it that God wants me to do? And when I live my life according to God's will, my life goes very, very well indeed. I'm so lucky. Bottom of 54. Hence, we saw that reason isn't everything. Neither is reason, as most of us use it, entirely dependable. Though it emanate, I'm at the top of 55, though it emanate from our best minds, what about people who proved that man could never fly? Yet we had been seeing another kind of flight, a spiritual liberation from this world, people who rose above their problems. They said God made these things possible, and we only smiled. We had seen spiritual release, but like to tell ourselves it wasn't true. Actually, we were fooling ourselves, for deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other it is there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. We have all been knocked around. We've all had disappointment. Don't let that color you. Don't let that shape you. There is a God. And most of the time we forget that men, women, humans have the power to do good and the power to not do good. We have the power within us to make choices. And a lot of the things that we see all the time that dissuade us from a belief in God are humans making bad choices. Yes, there are people that die of horrific disease. Yes, there are people who have, God forbid, this disease or that disease, and they are taken from us in what we think is an unjust way. And it hurts. I've lost my parents. Most of you have too. I've never had brothers and sisters, so I don't know what that's about. I've never had cousins, aunts, or uncles. I don't know what that's about. I really don't. But some of you have had loss in your life that's tremendous, horrible, and you blame God. Well, remember that God put a bunch of people on this earth. And sometimes disease does happen. And sometimes things do happen that we're very, very sorry for. But God was probably crying right with you. God was crying while you were crying too. And somehow you're here. Is that person's death a reason for you to lay down and die too? Is that person's unfortunate situation, is that the hill that you want to die on? Where does it serve that person who's gone? Or how does that serve that person who was wronged or hurt or something? How does it serve that person if you die in the food? How does that help anyone? And the answer is, of course, it does not. It doesn't help anyone. So or the racial injustices in America, or the Holocaust, or whatever. If you could convince me that me eating ice cream is going to justify that and change it, I will eat ice cream. But you're not going to convince me that me eating ice cream is going to change any of that. It's just not. Let's go, page 55. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. He was as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality, capitalized. The great reality is the real world as it is today, deep down within us. But the great reality here is the reality that there is a God. In the last analysis, it is only there that he may be found. It was so with us. God will be there when we look for him. And most often I find God in the face of one of his children. If I'm looking for God, I will always find him in the face of one of his children, his suffering children. By that, I mean somebody who is a food addict who needs my help. That is where I mostly find God, is in the face of one of his children. Okay, let's keep going. And so it was with us. He may be found. We can only clear the ground a bit. I'm on page 55. It is if our testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourages you to search diligently within yourself, then if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. The broad highway is that highway to God. It's capitalized. With this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. Just keep walking to God. He'll run to you. I remember when my daughter, it was a Thursday, and my daughter took her first steps, and I was there. I was home from work. It was 4 o'clock about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And she took her first steps, and I ran to her. Me and her mother ran to her. We picked her up. We kissed every inch of her. She was so cute. We loved her so much. That's what God wants to do with you. When you take those first steps toward God, he is going to run to you. He is going to rush to you. He is going to run to you. And he is going to embrace you as we embraced my daughter that day, almost 30 years ago, where she took her first steps. We were living in Eugene, Oregon at that time. And she got up and she took steps on a Thursday. And that was a day that we will never forget. Me or my ex-wife will never forget that day. If our testimony, oh, we did that already. The conscience of your, in this book, you will read the experience of a man who thought he was an atheist. We're talking about Fitzmayo. We're talking about Fitzmayo. Fitzmayo. I can't talk this morning. M-A-Y-O. Okay. In this book, you will read the experience of a man who thought he was an atheist. His story is so interesting that some of it should be told now. His change of heart was dramatic, convincing, and moving. Top of 56. This story is in our Southern Friend. If you're looking for the expanded story, it's the story of Fitzmayo, M-A-Y-O, and it's on page 208 of the 4th edition of the Big Book. 208 of the 4th edition. But for right now, we're just going to stick to this script right now. Our friend was a minister's son. He attended church school where he became rebellious at what he thought was an overdose of religious education. For years thereafter, he was dogged by trouble and frustration, business failure, insanity, fatal illness, suicide. These calamities in his immediate family embittered and depressed him. Now, let's take a look here at what we're looking at here. You've got this Fitzmayo, and in his family, he had what he considered an overdose of religious education. Some of you fit into that category, okay? Business failure, insanity, fatal illness, suicide. These calamities in his immediate family embittered and depressed him. Every one of the people on this line right now has had people that have been depressed, that has had failures in business. You've had all kinds of setbacks in your life. And sometimes we use this as a springboard to resent and disbelieve God. And we write God off and we start living our life on our own power, on our own momentum, and it doesn't go very well. And we continue to blame God. We just continue to blame him. And the truth of the matter is, he's just waiting for you to take those first steps. Mental and physical collapse, impending mental and physical collapse brought him to the point of self-destruction. Us too. One night, I'm on page 56. One night, when confined in a hospital, he was approached by an alcoholic who had known a spiritual experience. The man that approached Fitzmayo at the town's hospital was Silas Bent, B-E-N-T, Silas Bent. And Silas Bent was one of the early members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Silas Bent, just for those keeping score at home. He was approached by an alcoholic who had known a spiritual experience. Our friend's gorge rose as he bitterly cried out, "If there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me." But later, alone in his room, he asked himself this question: is it possible that all the religious people I have known are wrong? Is it possible that every one of the people that you talk to that espouses that they've recovered from this disease for today is wrong about the power of God? I've been abstinent for 25 years. I haven't found it necessary to compulsively overeat in over 25 years. I have a good life. I'm relatively healthy for a 70-year-old person. I walk. I can drive. I can make a living. I have a house. I have a car. I have money in the bank. I have no debt. I have no encumbrances on me. I am involved romantically with a beautiful lady. I have a lot of friends. Could I be so wrong? Why would I lie to you to tell you that this is the manifestation of the power of God? None of this could have been brought about by me alone. How do I know that? I tried. I tried for years to achieve these things. I tried for years to accomplish these things. I couldn't do it. God did for me and continues to do for me what I cannot do for myself. And so why would I lie to you? Why would I tell you this story, this booby mindset? Why would I tell you that if it's not true? I am here to tell you that it is through the power of God that my life works today in whatever method it works. Okay, let's continue on. Okay, is it possible? While pondering the question, he felt as though he lived in hell. Then, like a thunderbolt, a great thought came. It crowded out all else. Who are you to say there is no God? Now, that's a good question. I think that's a hell of a question. Who am I to say there is no God? And here's the truth. I am nobody to say that. I don't want to say it. I don't need to say it. I am convinced beyond any reason that not only is there a God, but that this God has my recovery and my best interest at heart. Does that mean everything goes my way? No, it does not. Does that mean everything I think or want is immediately constructed into the universe? You better believe it is not. What it means is that I'm a human being and there's going to be good times and bad times, but I am not here to tell you that there is no God. The question here is, who are you to say there is no God? I can't think of who I think I am if I'm going to go say that. This man recounts that he tumbled out of bed to his knees. In a few seconds, he was overwhelmed by a conviction of the presence of God, capitalized. It poured over and through him with the certainty and majesty of a great tide at flood. The barriers he had built through the years were swept away. He stood in the presence of infinite power and love. He had stepped from bridge to shore for the first time. He lived in conscious companionship with his Creator. I feel God with me all the time. I do the best I can to live in conscious companionship with God. I know in my mind there are areas of my life, romantically, financially, health-wise, longevity-wise, whatever, I could not have gotten to on my own. It just does not work. It just doesn't work. Bottom of 56. Thus was our friend's cornerstone fixed in place. No later vicissitude. A vicissitude is an unwelcome change. You know, if you won the lottery, that would be a very welcome change to your life. But if you get a flat tire for your car, that's an unwelcome change. Now you got to go put up with the BS of getting it fixed or buying a new tire or what have you. No later vicissitude, a vicissitude is an unwelcome change, has shaken it. His alcoholic problem was taken away that very night. Years ago, it disappeared. Let me read that again like a person that knows how to read. His alcoholic problem was taken away. That very night, years ago, it disappeared. Save for a few brief moments of temptation, the thought of drink has never returned. And at such times, a great revulsion has risen up in him. Seemingly, he could not drink, even if he would. God had restored his sanity. And when you look at that again, the word sanity brings us back to step 2. Notice it doesn't say God had restored his sobriety. God had restored his recovery, because sanity is much more open-ended, much more higher ceilinged, much more expansive than just sobriety. There are areas in my life today, where I could not get to if I was still eating. But yet I see the challenges of being a person who, after all these years of program, I still try to get my way. I still try to manipulate to get my way. I still want people to react the way I want them to react. I still avert conflict. I still will run the other way when I know I'm probably going to hear something I don't want to hear. I still need to grow. I still need to change. I still need to advance as a human being. And sometimes I just don't want to, but God knows I need to. And so for me, I have to grow in areas that have nothing to do with the food. And the first few years, you hear the lie every day. The lie is abstinence is the most important thing in my life without exception. That's not true. Abstinence is like the ramp that gets you on the highway. If you don't have abstinence, you can't get on the highway. We just read about the broad highway. Abstinence is like English 101 and English 102. It's a prerequisite. But abstinence alone does not treat the disease, and abstinence alone does not move you forward. And the first few years you're here, depending on how much you weigh, don't eat, go to meetings, don't eat, go to meetings, don't eat, go to meetings. But there comes a point where you still don't eat and you still go to meetings, but there has to be more to it than just don't eat and go to meetings. I have to grow. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to sponsor other people. I'm going to have to, from time to time, do a 4-step inventory. I'm going to have to do 10 steps, plural, every day. I'm going to have to do an 11 step in the morning and an 11 step at night. I'm going to have to do things that are going to bring me closer to God and develop me as a human being that are going to be amazing if I am not eating. So the abstinent being the most important thing in my life without exception is a lie. It is not true. Abstinence is a bare beginning. It is a bare beginning. If I'm going to look at abstinence and I'm going to say, well, this is the be all and the end all, this is everything about this program, I am going to sell this program very, very short. This program has a lot more to offer me than just simply a neutrality around food. I know that when we're first getting started and we're first getting our bearings, this is vital. I am understanding that. I'm not oblivious to that, and I get it. I totally get it. But again, there's more to life than not eating and going to meetings. There is the growth that occurs as the result of the steps. There is the growth that occurs as the result of the spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. And there is the not only the growth, but the service. And not only the growth and the service, but the faith. And that faith comes from doing God activities all the time and seeing how it makes me feel, seeing how it makes me hate myself less and like myself more, seeing what a contribution I can give to the world. And if I can contribute to the world, I have to think you can too. I have to think that you can do it too. Let's continue. We're on page 57. What is this but a miracle of healing? Yet its elements are simple. Circumstances made him willing to believe. He humbly offered himself to his maker, then he knew. When he says he humbly offered himself to his maker, that means he said the 3rd step prayer. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me, do with me as thou wilt. Now, what is the object of the 3rd step? Are we turning anything over to anybody in step 3? We indeed are not. We are agreeing to do so. And specifically, how do you know you're working step 3? By working 4 through 12. That is what step 3 is. It is an agreement between you and God to go work steps 3 through 12 for the rest of your life every single day. And if you do step 10s and you do step 11s and you do what it is that we're talking about relative to sponsoring, You are doing the rest of the steps every single day. I went over Bill's story this morning with a sponsee. Well, I can't just do that by myself. I need that other person to do that with me. Page 57. Even so has God restored us all to our right minds. To this man, the revelation was sudden. Some of us grow into it more slowly, but he has come to all who have honestly sought him. We mean God, not Fitz. When we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us. John Henry Fitzhugh Mayo was the second sobriety in New York after Hank Parkhurst. He died from cancer in October of 1943. He was 8 years sober at that time that he died. Fitz's sister Agnes actually loaned AA $1,000 to get the big book from the printer in April of 1939. $1,000 at that time was a lot of money. Fitz's wife was Elizabeth. Fitz started AA in Washington, D.C. Fitz and Elizabeth were very, very good friends with Lois and Bill. They commuted between Washington, D.C. area. The Maryland side of it was where Fitz lived, and New York quite a bit. Jimmy Burwell, who was the first atheist in AA, was very good friends with Fitz Mayo as well. And they're buried in Owings Mills, Maryland, maybe 50 feet apart. They're both with their wives, but they're about 50 feet apart in that cemetery in Owings Mills, Maryland. Fitz Mayo wanted a Christian book. He wanted a book which espoused the power of Christ. Compromises up and down the line had to be made, and he didn't get the Christian book in the big book that he wanted. He got a spiritual book out of here, but he didn't get a Christian book. And we have a situation on our hands where, honestly, had he lived, he might have been more recognized as a co-founder of AA than even Dr. Bob. Fitz Mayo did a lot to get this book going, help the project out. He was the one who went to the Library of Congress. They wanted to name the book The Way Out. And he went and he examined at the Library of Congress, and he found out that there was 13 or 14 books named The Way Out. And so they decided on Alcoholics Anonymous after their fellowship. The fellowship is named after the book is named after the fellowship, and so on. But the bottom line is that he was very instrumental in his work with early AA, and he died much too young. He died in 1943 of cancer. Fitz was never in World War I. He was 4F, which meant he was medically cleared medically he couldn't serve. And it always bothered him that he couldn't serve his country. So when World War II broke out, he was older, obviously, but he went down there and he tried to get inducted into the service, into the Army. And while he was down there, I believe it was 1941, the year of Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was December 7th, 1941. He went down and they found out that he had cancer and he only lived a few more years. So it was just an unfortunate thing. And the loss of Fitz was a big loss for Bill and Lois. They loved Fitz very much. It's a big loss for Lois and Bill. The next chapter is How It Works. And this is a chapter where we are going to discuss the two most misunderstood steps. We're going to get into them more in detail next week because we only have a few more minutes, this week. But just to give you sort of a little bit of an overview of it. This was one of the later chapters written. And this chapter was written at a time in October, November of 1938. The book was printed in April of 39, and this was already fall, it was autumn, almost winter of 38. And Bill was at home, and he knew that he had to codify the program of action. He had to put down on paper the steps or the things we needed to do. And he said that the pencil took on a life all of its own. And within 20 minutes, he wrote the chapter, How It Works. Now, they forced some changes on him. Many of you have seen those changes because you've gone into other publications and you've seen where they have forced certain changes on him. And you can look those up on your own. Those are easy to do on Google. You can Google them. You don't have to, you can Google them. But let's take a look in the few minutes we have left on the influence that Sam Shoemaker had on this fellowship. Who was Sam Shoemaker? Sam Shoemaker was the Episcopalian minister who became the front man for the Oxford group in the United States, and he was at the Calvary Mission in New York City. Sam Shoemaker, spelled just like a person who makes shoes. And Sam Shoemaker had written a book called Twice Born Ministers. And on page 92 of Twice Born Ministers, now this is not a conference approved book. I'm just telling you the history. I'm telling you how this occurred. In the book Twice Born Ministers, Sam Shoemaker describes 4 impediments to God. What is an impediment? An impediment is something that stops or slows progress. That stops or slows progress. And the 4 impediments, Sam knew, had to be overcome through action if a person is going to truly find God. Here are the 4 impediments that he wrote of. Number 1, a resentment that you will not let go of. We love a good resentment. I'm going to be talking about that a lot in the time to come. I'm going to be talking about that throughout this chapter. We love a good resentment. Why do we love a good resentment? Because if I resent you, I don't have to take any responsibility for my own life. I can blame you and you bastard, you did this to me, or you witch, you did this to me. And if you hadn't have done that to me, I wouldn't be where I am today. And how many of us have thought that and passed it off as just very normal because we get convinced that that's true, right? But the freshness date on my unhappy childhood and my freshness date on my marriage and my freshness date on my relationships that went south have expired. It's expired. And if I'm going to live a life that's free and I'm going to live a life that's happy, then I'm going to have to let go of these resentments. So the first impediment became step 4. And the first impediment is a resentment that you will not let go of. What is the second of the impediments? Is a secret that you will not tell. Now, does that mean that next week I'm going to be telling you what my password is at the bank and what my account number is at the bank? No. What it means is I am going to allow you through my words to delve into each and every nook and cranny of my life. I'm not going to hold anything back from you. You want to know about what it was like to be a fat boy? I'm going to tell you as best I can. Do you want to know what it was like to go on your first date when you're 35? I'm going to tell you to the best of my ability. Do you want to know what it's like to be me? I'm going to describe it for you in the best way that I know how, as I do every week. as I do every week. So the fifth step became something from the second of the impediments, and that is a secret that you will not tell. The first impediment, a resentment that you will not let go of. And the second of the impediments is a secret that you will not tell. What is the third of the impediments is a harmful thrill that you will not stop. A harmful thrill that you will not stop. What does that mean? Lying, cheating, gossiping, cutting corners, doing whatever it is you're doing that you know you wish you weren't doing. Doing things that you know very, very well you should not be doing. You shouldn't be lying and gossiping and maybe cheating on your spouse or doing whatever it is you're doing. Those things cannot have a place in a recovered life. I am of the belief, this is just me. This is not AA. This is not OA. This is not Sam Shoemaker. This is not Bill Wilson. This is Harlan Grabowski. I do not believe that I can be working the 12 steps successfully while I'm breaking the 10 commandments. I believe that if you are not monogamous in your relationship or whatever, unless it's something that both of you don't want, whatever, I am of the belief that I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about me. I cannot be successful in the 12 steps unless I am successful at working the 10 commandments. That is not an indictment of you. You can do whatever you want. I am talking about me. And the fourth of the impediments is a restitution that we will not make, steps 8 and 9. So the guts of the program that we have today, steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 come directly from these impediments. I'm going to go through the impediments one more time so you don't have to take up time in the Q&A and ask me, although I know it'll probably come up. The first of the impediments is a resentment that you will not let go of. The second impediment is a secret that you will not tell. Now, the first impediment became step 4, a resentment you will not let go of. Now, the second of the impediments is a secret you will not tell. That became step 5. Now, the third impediment is a harmful thrill that you will not stop. That became steps 6 and 7. And the fourth impediment is a restitution you will not make. That became steps 8 and 9. So I'm sure somebody smarter than me can post these impediments with the corresponding steps in the chat. I'm sure someone smarter than me can do that. Okay. All right. So next week, we are going to start on page 58. We're going to start on how it works. And we're going to be discussing steps 3 and 4. And this is the 2 most misunderstood steps, 3 and 4. Okay? This is very, very important stuff. To encapsulate the chapter that we just finished, we agnostics. We agnostics is very important. Ag means without, gnostic means knowledge. This is step 2. Chapter 4 is step 2. We do not have to have this perfect understanding of God. We do not have to have lunch with God and have him disclose to us all of the secrets of the universe. All that is required is that you believe, or you be willing to believe, that there is a power greater than yourself. And it says in chapter 4, the main object of this book is to help you find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. And if it is the main object of this book, it better damn well be the main object of my life, is to help me find a power greater than myself, which will solve my problem. Very, very important. Do you believe, or are you willing to believe, that there is a power greater than yourself? Are you so pompous? Are you so egotistical that you are the power of the universe? That you are the be all and the end all of the universe? Is that what we're looking at now? I don't think so. Did you create the sun and the moon and the stars and the sky? Did you create everything? Did you create the forests? Did you create the solar system? I don't think so. But someone did. Someone did. This disease of compulsive overeating has a lower recovery rate than cancer. This disease of compulsive overeating has a lower recovery rate than cancer. With all of the drugs and all of the medical procedures and all of the bullshit that they can throw at you, the self-help books and all the gymnasiums, and lower recovery rate than cancer. But if you will follow the dictates of a higher power, you will recover. Next week, we'll read the words, "Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path." I have never seen anyone fail who has thoroughly followed our path. I'm here 45 years. I've never seen it in my life. Someone fail who thoroughly follows our path. This is not a program for people who need it. It's not a program for people who want it. It's a program for people who do it. So that is the key. Okay, I'm going to throw this back to Sue L. or Maria, and I'm going to give it back to them, and we will do our Q&A. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was helpful. And I hope next week we get a lot more people, because I know that when I miss, like I went to the retreat, it takes a couple of weeks to get the people back. So I'm hoping some of them will come back next week. Anyway, Maria or Sue L., whoever's in line here, or Audrey,